When you think about history, are there lots of old guys wearing wigs and stockings? When you think about history, is Napoleon really short? And folks have wooden teeth. Do you know that history can be the most incredible, amazing stories for you and me? Sit back and listen to a story right now. It's honest, it's fun, and it's sure to.
Hi, young historians. Welcome to another episode of Anytime Now. I'm Brooke, co-founder of Honest History. Are you as excited about this episode as I am? I sure hope so. We're about to dive into another story-filled adventure and learn something new. And remember, by learning more about the past, you can make a positive impact on the future. So pack your bags and let's go.
Have you ever wondered how surfing was invented? This ancient sport has a long history, dating back to at least the time of the ancient Polynesians. Today, it's easy for us to spot surfers out on the waves, especially if you're somewhere like Hawaii, California, or Australia. But you might be surprised to hear that surfing has almost disappeared. This sport has a fascinating history involving ancient laws, great kings, and a courageous Olympian who shared his Hawaiian tradition with the world. Surf's up, young historians. Today, we're plunging into the history of surfing. Our story begins centuries ago on an island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. The turquoise waves crashed onto the white sandy beach. A man paddled out on a wooden board, watching the movement of the ocean around him. As the water began to swell, he quickly started paddling out front. The wave grew larger and carried him closer and closer to the shore until he reached the beach. Smiling, he picked up the board and ran back into the water to catch another wave. This man is from Polynesia, a group of islands in the Pacific Ocean. His ancestors were skilled navigators who traveled and explored the ocean. Eventually, they left the island of Tahiti and reached a place known today as Hawaii. The Polynesian people told stories about how the Hawaiian Islands came to be. According to legend, Hawaii was formed during a long battle between two sisters, Pele, the goddess of fire, and Namaka, the goddess of water. As the sisters fought, Pele dipped a stick into the ocean, creating volcanoes. These fiery mountains would be Pele's new home. But each time she made a volcano, Namaka found her and Pele left to make another home. The volcanoes would eventually form the islands of Hawaii. When the Polynesian people arrived in Hawaii, they brought these stories and traditions with them. They also brought a love for the ocean, including their love of riding waves. They called it He'e Nalu, which means sliding on a wave. Today, it is known as surfing. In ancient Hawaii, surfing was enjoyed by everyone, men, women, and children of all classes. But surfing wasn't just for fun, it was also part of their laws. Hawaiians followed the code of kapu. These were rules that said if certain things were forbidden or sacred in Hawaiian society, the code told people how to fish, how to grow food, what to eat, and it even had rules about surfing. According to kapu, people were only allowed to surf in certain places. Royalty and the upper classes got the top surfing spots with the best waves. Commoners weren't allowed to surf in these areas. If they did, their punishment could be death. The Code of Kapu also had strict rules about how long people's surfboards could be. The everyday people had shorter boards, which were about 12 feet long. If you were royalty, your surfboard could be double the size at 24 feet long, which is taller than a giraffe. Even though there were differences between the top and bottom of society, surfing was enjoyed by everyone. It was an important part of the ancient Hawaiians' religious beliefs. Riding waves was a ritual and a way to pray to the gods. Even making the board was a spiritual practice that involved many important steps. First, a craftsman picked a tree. This was where he would get the wood to make the surfboard. The tree had to be either a koa or willy-willy tree. After he selected the tree, he he placed a red fish at the trunk. He cut down the tree with an axe and dug a hole near its roots. He would then bury the fish in the hole with a prayer. This was an offering to the gods in return for the tree. Using the axe, the craftsman carved the trunk into the right shape. Then, a group of people came to carry the wood to the beach so he could finish his work. The wood was set into a canoe house, where the craftsman continued shaping and smoothing the wood. He used a piece of rough coral to help get rid of all the jagged edges. He also used stones to polish the board. Next, he took the bark of a kukui tree and pounded it until some of the juice came out. He took this liquid and spread it over the board to make it a beautiful color. Once the stain dried, he took the oil from the kukui nut and brushed it over the board to give it a shine. The board was ready, but there was still more to do. The builder often held a special ceremony before it was placed in the water. Surfing became an important part of celebrations and competitions. These competitions were often held between different chiefs or chieftainesses to show their strength. In ancient Hawaii, the royalty were typically the most skilled surfers. Unlike commoners, they didn't spend their days farming or fishing and can spend a lot of time out on the waves. As leaders, it was also important for these men and women to gain respect, and surfing was a way to show their strength and courage. Surfing was woven into the daily life and rituals of ancient Hawaii. But this life that they had known for centuries was about to drastically change. Land ho! In 1778, a British ship set anchor in Waimea Bay on the island of Kauai. The ship's captain, James Cook, saw people on wooden boards and canoes out in the ocean. He was amazed by their ability to ride the waves back onto the beach. One of Cook's crew later wrote about the first time he saw surfers in Hawaii. The men, sometimes 20 or 30, go without the swell of the surf and lay themselves flat upon an oval piece of plank about their size and breadth. They keep their legs close on top of it, and their arms are used to guide the plank. They wait for the time of the greatest swell that sets on shore, push forward with their arms to keep on its top. It sends them in with the most astonishing velocity.
Hi friends, are you enjoying today's episode? I'd like to take a quick break from the story to tell you about another great place to learn about the past. Honest History creates magazines and books for kids that are filled with fun stories and activities that bring history to life. From pirates to spies to great inventions and so much more, you'll learn about interesting people, places, and events from around the world that made history. Created for kids ages 6 through 12, you can sign up and receive new adventures delivered straight to your doorstep every quarter. Just visit honesthistory.co. That's honesthistory.co to sign up today. Oh, and here's a special offer for our podcast listeners. Use code ANYTIMENOW for 10% off. Again, that special code is ANYTIMENOW. Okay, let's get back to the story.
Shortly after the British landed in Hawaii, more and more Europeans began arriving on the shores. During this time, a great chief named Kamehameha conquered the lands to create a powerful kingdom. Like the chiefs before him, King Kamehameha was a skilled surfer, but life and surfing in the Kingdom of Hawaii was about to change. By the 1820s, American missionaries had begun settling on the lands. These missionaries spread Christianity and discouraged Hawaiians from following their ancient traditions. They also brought many new illnesses that were deadly to the native population. Over the following years, thousands of Hawaiians died from diseases such as smallpox. As Hawaiians struggled to survive, so too did their way of life. The code of kapu was no longer followed, and with it, surfing also began to die out. It would take one person to not only bring surfing back to Hawaii, but to share it with the rest of the world. His name was Duke Kahanamoku. Duke was born in 1890 in Honolulu. At this time, Hawaii was ruled by the Hawaiian queen, Laliuokalani. Like his ancestors before him, Duke spent his childhood on the beaches and waters of the Pacific Ocean, and Waikiki, just a few miles from the bustling center of Honolulu, Duke explored the coconut trees, groves, and rice fields near his home. He learned how to catch crabs and eels and spent as much time as possible in the water. Family, or ohana, was very important to him. But Hawaii and its people would endure many changes during this time. When Duke was 3 years old, a group of white businessmen and American soldiers helped overthrow Hawaii's queen, ending the Kingdom of Hawaii. 5 years later, Hawaii became a territory of the United States, and Duke, along with his fellow Hawaiians, became American citizens. Many Hawaiian traditions struggled to survive in the new American system. Duke and his siblings were sent to schools where they weren't allowed to speak Hawaiian, and they often had to live away from their families. But Duke never forgot the traditions of the ancient people, especially he'enalu, or sliding on waves. He left high school and returned to his home in Waikiki, where he could be close to the ocean. When he wasn't working, he was at the beach, studying the different types of waves and learning how to build his own surfboard. "I was constantly redoing my board and getting the most out of the surf," Duke said. Just like the ancient builders before him, he used coral to rough out the edges and a stone to polish the wood. Living much of his life in the water, it's probably no surprise that Duke was an incredible swimmer. He was so skilled that he qualified for the U.S. Olympic team in 1912 and brought home a gold medal. After the Olympics, Duke began giving swimming demonstrations in different cities across the United States. But as he showed people his talent for swimming, he couldn't resist sharing another one of his talents to the crowds gathered on the beaches. One day, during one of his demonstrations, he grabbed his long wooden surfboard and paddled out into the waves. As the water began to swell, he started paddling and jumped on his board. Spectators on the beach cheered as Duke rode the wave towards the beach. Sometimes he would turn and ride backwards, and other times he would put his hands on the board and lift himself up into a handstand. The crowds were shocked and cried out to see more. From that day on, Duke began giving surfing demonstrations, first in the East Coast and then in the West Coast, in California. By this time, many Californians had heard of surfing from another famous surfer, George Freeth. In 1907, Freeth had drawn huge crowds to his surfing shows on the California beaches. But Duke decided to travel even further, to places like Australia and New Zealand, where he demonstrated surfing to hundreds of people who had never seen it before. As more people outside of Hawaii learned about surfing, the sport became more popular. Soon, people on the beaches of California and Australia were picking up boards and trying to ride the waves too. At this time, Duke was the world's greatest surfer, and he wanted everyone to enjoy the sport he loved. "The best surfer out there is the one having the most fun," he often said. But Duke showed that surfing wasn't only fun, it was also life-saving. One day in 1925, Duke was in Newport Beach, California. The waves that morning were enormous, growing up to 20 and 30 feet tall. He watched as a fishing boat battled with the violent swells. He knew something bad was going to happen. Moments later, a powerful wave smashed into the boat, flooding its engine room and throwing the fisherman into the dangerous ocean. "I can do something," Duke said, and grabbed his board. Without a moment to lose, he and his two friends jumped into the water. Duke paddled against the pounding waves until he reached the men. He pulled one of them onto his board and swam back to safety. Then, he jumped back into the dangerous waters and swam out to the rest of the fishermen. He kept doing this, swimming back and forth against the violent waves until he saved 8 people. "We lost count of the number of trips we made. Without the boards, we probably would not have been able to rescue a single person," Duke remembered. The newspapers wrote about this day, calling it the Great Rescue of 1925. Duke's actions showed that surfboards could be used for rescue missions. Today, you will see lifeguards with surfboards strapped to the top of their trucks. That's largely because of Duke. Duke would go on to have an incredible career. While he lived in California, he starred in several Hollywood movies. He also won many more Olympic medals in both swimming and water polo. Surfing, however, was always the most important sport in Duke's life. By sharing something he loved, he was able to spread surfing around the world. Many say, because of Duke, the Hawaiian tradition was able to survive and continues to be popular today. Surfing has seen many changes since the days of Duke Kahanamoku. Today, you'll find that most surfboards are made of foam rather than heavy wood. Boards also have fins at the bottom that allow surfers to turn and do all kinds of tricks. But in one important way, surfing hasn't changed too much. Just like centuries ago, surfing is still enjoyed by everyone. If you travel to beaches around the world, chances are you'll find people of all ages sliding on waves. And as Duke Kahanamoku said, the best surfer is the one that's having the most fun.
Welcome back! What did you think of today's adventure? We hope you learned something new. Be sure to share the story with your friends and family, and use what you've learned today to go out there and make a positive impact on history yourself. That's all for now, but if you want to learn more about important and amazing stories from the past, be sure to subscribe to Honest History Magazine, where you'll discover stories from around the world. Thanks for listening! This episode was narrated by Randall Lawrence and written by Heidi Coburn. Production was led by Robot Pirate Media. To learn more about Honest History, visit us at honesthistory.co and follow along for updates on social media.